Ladies and gentlemen, the ghost of Christmas destroyed.
We interrupt this program with a special bulletin. America is now under martial law. All constitutional rights have been suspended. Stay in your homes. Do not attempt to contact loved ones, insurance agents, or attorneys. Shut up. Do not attempt to think, or depression may occur. Stay in your homes. Curfew is at 7 p.m. sharp after work. Anyone caught outside the gates of their subdivisions after curfew will be shot. Remain calm. Do not panic. Your neighborhood watch officer will be by to collect urine samples in the morning. Anyone interfering with the collection of urine samples will be shot. Houses will be inspected for trace elements at noon. Anyone failing to display the mandatory embossed black velvet Mexican-style painting of Ayn Rand on their living room wall will be shot. To further protect private property against terrorist attacks, cameras and surveillance equipment will be placed on all lampposts and streetlights. Anyone failing to attend morning school prayer or prescribed worship services on Sunday will be promptly arrested and dispatched to a re-education resort. Stay in your homes. Remain calm. The number one enemy of progress is questions. National security is more important than individual rights. Under the provisions of the War on Drugs, the War on Terror, Zero Tolerance, and the Child Protection and Obscenity Enforcement Act, all property and life savings of suspected drug users and suspected pornographers will be seized and sold prior to trial. Anyone opposing this policy will be presumed to be under the influence of drugs and shipped immediately to boot camp to serve a sentence of hard labor beneath an inflatable statue of Nancy Reagan as she is humped from the rear by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. Sports broadcasts will proceed as scheduled. No more than 2 people may gather anywhere without permission. Use only the drugs prescribed by your coach, your boss, or your supervisor. Shut up! Be happy! Obey all orders without question. Shut up! The comfort you've demanded is now mandatory. At last, everything is done for you. How to do it. Today's punk rock accessory, old man glasses.
Yeah!
I am your clock. I am your religion. I am your shotgun mechanical bride. Nothing is done without my approval. I own you, I own you, I decide how long you sleep and how much rest you are ever allowed. I decide what you desire. I deny you time to think. I am the mirror of constant humiliation that follows and shadows you wherever you go. Be on time, be on schedule, always feel like you're always late. Do not daydream, do not fall behind. Wings are flapping right behind you as I swoop down like a hungry owl and sink my talons deep into your back. No time allowed to try something you like. The bills were all due yesterday. I am your teacher, who yelled at you for not paying attention and shamed you in front of the entire class and dragged you around the room by the hair. This is what happens to boys and girls whose penmanship is messy. Be neat like the others. Follow orders. Obey what is put in front of you. Imagination is a sin. I am your counselor. We have to have a little talk. If you liked school, you'll love work. You can't be creative the rest of your life. Resign yourself to a job you'll hate. Get a hobby, but keep it in the garage. Despise your ideas, your boss knows best. Always settle for what you're told to expect. We can't all choose what we want to do. Do not take chances, you might fail. And you don't want to find out the hard way how our society treats misfits who make mistakes. I am your schedule. I keep you exhausted, henpecked and afraid. I lead you down garden path after path with carrots on a stick I'll let you taste but never embrace. Don't peek in that door, I'll slam it on your fingers. No, no, adventure is not allowed. There is no time, there is no time. Never enough energy at the end of the day to recharge your batteries and reclaim who you are and try and build something better than the grind you call your life. I am your phone. You must submit unto me. Demonically possessed by your plastic guardian angel, you take me to bed, you take me to the beach, you take me hiking on the beautiful Colorado mountain trails, texting and emailing while you're supposed to be driving. Out of fear you'll fall further behind. One interruption after another, trying to beat them all away with a pitchfork, while more pitchforks jab you from every direction. What was I trying to get done a second ago? You'll never know. Concentration out the window. Stop everything for every instant message. Playing instant space, playing endless space invaders with the inside of your head. More every week, more every year. When was the last time you got a good night's sleep, or stopped to smell the rosebuds, or even stopped to think? Instant this, instant that. How much of it ever really matters? Keeping up with every tweet and blather, you wind up missing everything else. And thus wind up making yourself that much easier to manipulate. The hatch of your hamster cage is open, but guess who waits just outside the door? Stay on that treadmill, keep running on that little wheel, laptop on shoulder, briefcase in hand, money raining just out of reach. The house, the cars, the mortgage payments, credit card payments, kids. The more you own, the more you owe to maintain it. No matter how much you make, you're barely making it. More and more overhead, but where is the shelter? You'll burn out soon enough. It's all part of the plan. When you're no longer useful, you can finally retire. Free at last, in the glue factory of your choice, to scratch your head and wonder, what happened to me? Free at last. Tick, tick, tick. I bid you goodbye. On your own, to wait, to die. Visualize the possibilities. The White House stormed and occupied. Crooks in Congress forced to strip naked and dance. Trump and his fascists all in cages on a circus train, on a funeral ride, nationwide, 10 miles an hour through towns big and small, pelted through the bars of their cages with every icky, smelly substance we can find, begging for mercy as their hair melts away, screaming, "Fake news, fake news," as the townspeople belly laugh. But then what? Then what? What do we want? What are we actually for? And how on earth will we get it all done? For one thing, this whole situation is ripe for a worldwide wave of good old-fashioned crime. Not with guns, not with bombs. I'm talking about creative crime. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for creative crime. When you think about it, what's the last unspoiled art form left on earth? Crime. No art school teaches crime, so there are no cookie-cutter, critic-damaged, academically overanalyzed guide paths and rules for truly serendipitously inspired creative crime. Every aspiring crime artiste has to get creative on their own initiative. That spark, that light bulb, magic accidents explode overhead when you least expect it. Look how one inspired patriotic citizen completely torpedoed and sank Mitt Romney in 2012 just by leaving their camera phone on, as Romney condescendingly and viciously trashed that 47% of Americans who think they're entitled to health care, who think, and this is a quote, they think they're entitled to food. Remember that? Well, now this Trumposaurus Rex, who has to know deep down he's in way over his bloviating head, lying awake at night, fuming into his phone, trapped in a sea of melting, moldy McDonald's wrappers in his own collapsing cartoon reality show, is wide open for some really good pranks. Trumpenstein, the Great Gloatsby, this Richie Rich crossed with Cartman from South Park. This Kim Jong-Don-old child emperor with that giant glued-on comb-over instead of clothes. Is so goddamn immature, thin-skinned, and sensitive that one rubber band or spitwad can send him into an all-night bender of broken TV sets and psycho tweets. Well, we should all join in. This is the infantile drama queen who carried on like Veruca Salt that the whole election was rigged because Saturday Night Live made fun of him. Remember that? This is the guy whose fire and fury threats against big bad North Korea got compared to Slayer lyrics in no less than the New York Times. This is the guy who is so insanely jealous of Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, he demanded his own North Korea/Russian-style military parade with missiles and, right at that angle we all know and love, and tanks and swarms of marching soldiers roaring down Pennsylvania Avenue for his inauguration. In a rare moment of wisdom, the Pentagon refused. Maybe because they were scared a whole group of soldiers would turn their guns toward the reviewing stand and give him the Anwar Sadat treatment. Who knows? As soon as Trump-a-muck bitches and moans about the NFL to cover up the ongoing Katrina-side in Puerto Rico, the whole sports star protest just mushrooms to the point where even the owner of the Dallas Cowboys is linking arms and kneeling with his players on the field just to torment and annoy King Donald. What does all this mean? It means we can all start Saturday Night Live-ing our poor, put-upon President Baby Man again and again and again. Merely existing is a good place to start at this point. Remember that prank phone call on Governor Scott Walker in Wisconsin when he took office, where the guy who recorded it claimed he was one of the Koch brothers, and Walker believed him as he gleefully dished on how he and the other cokehead puppet governors in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Pence in Indiana, and Governor Kasich in Ohio were going to destroy everything, from health care to unions to schools to every last pollution law. Let them eat Flint. Drink Flint? We could call Trump and claim we're Angela Merkel, or claim we're Netanyahu, or even claim we're the one he fell in love with, Kim Jong-un. God, I thought Trump hated male-on-male sex. Who knows? Or at least claim we're Kanye or Dennis Rodman. Claim we're Putin and threaten to call in all those loans that have Trump and his monster children on the hook for who knows how many billions of dollars to Russian banks and thus the Russian mob. Come on, Comrade Trumpsky. It's time to let me conquer Ukraine and Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Georgia, maybe Poland. Or it won't just suddenly be Putin Tower, Putin Alago, with you having to stare outside in the window while my best prostitutes in the world run all over the place before they piss all over your blabbering Cheeto-encrusted face. Don't forget, one wrong move and we can poison you. Or maybe even poison Jared and Ivanka right in their White House offices. Here's another one. Apply for jobs. The whole Trump-a-muck regime is so goddamn incompetent, they haven't gotten around to filling all kinds of crucial, important jobs. Right now, we don't have an attorney general, but that's about to change. I think we have a temp running the VA, a temp running the DEA. I don't know if we ever got an ambassador to South Korea, or Afghanistan, or Saudi Arabia, or Cuba, or Germany, or the EU, or Russia, or South Africa, or Qatar, or Bahrain, or India. Look at all this. Syria? No. Turkey? No. Venezuela? Probably not. Sweden? No. You know, we might be, what we're going to do about a UN ambassador either. So, the same lack of background checks that gave us Manafort and Michael Flynn, and for that matter, master mid-mind Mideast peace negotiator Jared Kushner. I mean, you might be able to get all kinds of jobs. You could show up all mohawk and studs and pierced and tattooed as the new ambassador to Belgium. Cut out a picture out of Hustler magazine, claim it's you, and apply to be an intern in the White House. Or, remember when a guy got all those so-called alt-right, you know, even the straight media called them neo-Nazis, as late as 3 years ago, the alt-right to wave Russian flags that he'd handed them all on their way into the CPAC convention, not telling them they were Russian flags. And most of you know, don't you, that the Don doesn't really bother reading books and only reads and watches tabloid media and only coverage of himself. I mean, Trump-a-muck is so goddamn delusional, wouldn't it be a great hack? Those, you know, to hack those latest so-called propaganda documents that his minions are required to bring him and read him twice a day, showing all the favorable coverage he's gotten since the last one, as reported by Vice magazine, or is somebody doing that already? I mean, this is the same guy, Trump-a-muck, who claimed in one of his ghost-written books that Madonna hit on him. And maybe those dick-sucking, genuflecting calls he claims he got patting him on the comb-over from the Boy Scouts and even the President of Mexico that he later had to admit never happened. Maybe those calls were actually bored underlings calling from 2 doors down in the White House. Hey, Ivanka, listen to this one. Oh, that's so funny, Jared. Weren't you supposed to be working on the Middle East or magically solving the opioid problem? Or getting me more trademark rights in China? Or maybe these phone calls are just voices in Mad Donald's head. That's schizophrenia, ladies and gentlemen. I'm familiar with chronic schizophrenia from a dear friend of mine and frequent house guest who many of you here I think are familiar with, named Wesley Willis. Yeah, and Wesley, for those who don't know, is about 6'6", 400 or 500 pound African-American kind of street artist from Chicago, who's both a master illustrator and wrote some very, very unusual, unfiltered songs that I've described to the uninitiated as Wildman Fisher times 100 or whatever. But the voices in his head, you could tell when he got the best of him because he started twitching and stuff. They were going at him 24/7. When he was the center of attention or had his headphones on, ear-splittingly loud, he kind of forgot about him. But they were always there telling him he was stupid, telling him he was a bum, that he should rob a bank or put a gun to his head. You know, when all this went down in my living room once in San Francisco, it was no joke. But what if Trump's demons are happy demons? And the voices he's hearing in his head are the kind of thing where, you know, he did some of this at the State of the Union address where, you're doing a great job. You're the best president in history. Everyone in the world respects you. Women all love you. Give me a headbutt. Say rah, quoting Wesley. Give me another headbutt. I've been saying, speculating for ages, that goofy-ass hairdo that Don parades around in was really so you can lift up the hood and hide a white hood underneath that's folded up in there, or maybe it just is to hide his devil horns, I don't know. But it's all that absurd hair really just to hide a thick bruise and a callus, just like Wesley Willis had on his head for headbutting so many people. Hey kids, can you say 25th Amendment? Okay, Donald, we'll give you a headbutt. I too want to thank Mark Bliesener for putting years of work into trying, pulling teeth, trying to get me to finally come out for one of these. Usually I'm here till like mid-January. Just get back to San Francisco, you're dragging me back here. But, this time I had to come. I mean, David Amram was part of the lure. I mean, one of the ways I got my musical education was trade-a-tape and records in Boulder. And they had a free box out front, and so I was so sick of bad FM radio. Well, here we're going to hear the latest from Dave Mason, and then we're going to hear a little bit from Elton John, and then, of course, pop radio was even worse. So I took every single record out of the free box every single day for 3 years, so I could find, and there were some great things in there. 13th Floor Elevators wound up in there, Nas album once, and Stooges Funhouse for a dime another time. Changed my life. But another one in there was a singer-songwriter album by the guy normally associated with jazz or classical music, whatever, by the name of David Amram, called Subway Night. And that singer-songwriter, I just in case it's not another Elton John or James Taylor horror, I'm gonna put it on. And right at a time when 50s nostalgia was making me physically ill, realizing kind of missed the coolest parts of the 60s, I was born a little too late, now there was Happy Days, there was American Graffiti, and even more than once at Boulder High they declared Fabulous 50s Day. And David's song, some folks seem to want us to dream the 50s are here again. TV shows deal psychic blows and take us to way back when. Remember when you greased your hair and Nixon greased his too? I don't despair that I was there, you're lucky it wasn't you. And then every year was covered in detail that, the kind of lyrics you'd normally expect out of Frank Zappa or the Sparks or beyond, and wrote equally well about things he liked. And so, after all these years, to share a stage with David Amram is a great honor here too, I must say. thank you, David, for coming out. And I first met Mark Bliesener in 1977 when he was a journalist and a drummer in the early punk new wave scene under the name Radio Pete. He lived in Boulder at the time, and after a Boulder punk show, maybe it was the Ravers or what later became the Night Flames, after he joined, and we were all at a party later, and both Rick Stott from Trade a Tape, oh boy, I miss that man, wonderful friend, and Mark, both at different times, the same party said, you know, Eric, what would really be a cool name for a band would be Dead Kennedys. And I filed that away, and then it was time to name my band in San Francisco. I proposed Thalidomide, and nobody else in the band liked that. So then I proposed Dead Kennedys, and they really, really didn't like that. I mean, Klaus recoiled, and East Bay Radio was like, we'll never get assigned by the record companies that way. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly what I'm hoping. So then I ran around telling people in the Dills and the Avengers and Negative Trend and the others that was the name of the band, and they couldn't get rid of it. Then a little bit later we started playing, and Ray Farrell at a store called Rather Ripped Records in Berkeley says, hey Eric, look what I really liked your interview in Clay magazine. I never did an interview in Clay magazine. Clay was C-L-E, a local slang term for Cleveland, which at the time had Pere Ubu and the Pagans and that whole scene going. And so I look at this magazine, and it's an interview with another band called Dead Kennedys. I thought, oh no. And I wrote a guy I'd been getting records off of there, Nick Nicholas from the Bizarros. He wrote back, oh, don't worry, they had to change their name because they couldn't get any gigs. Good thing I went west instead of east. Yeah, West also had something the East didn't have, all ages shows, which may be why the punk stuff that came out of there was so much fiercer in the long run. But anyway, so, got the name back, but then, only 35 years later, did Rick tell me that both he and Radio Pete, Mark Bliesener, and he fingers Mark for being the one who brought it to Rick's attention, they knew about the Cleveland band. They just didn't tell me that part. And the rest is sordid history. Let me get one more drink. Hi, I'm on the train track. Move! We don't want to go there. Buy my soda, said the Moose Diarrhea salesman. And we did. We all did. But when we brought it home and opened it, it was not what we thought we were getting. And instead of searching for what we really had in mind, we settled for searching for another Moose Diarrhea salesman. I remember how disappointed I was when my family brought home our first TV. It wasn't because it was black and white. When you turned the TV on, it wasn't President Kennedy on the screen. See, when we first went to the store to buy a TV, President Kennedy was there, in color, row after row of him, all the way to the ceiling. Look, Eric, it's President Kennedy. Hi, President Kennedy! I toilet trained late. On June 17th, 1963, the U.S. Supreme Court gave me the best birthday present a well-rounded 5-year-old could ask for. They outlawed prayer in public schools right before I started kindergarten. On November 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy's brains were blown apart on national TV. I came in from the yard and saw my mom crying on the couch. What did I do this time? I'd already driven her to tears once that day. Later, in that same living room, Lee Harvey Oswald was gunned down on TV before my very eyes, and again on the instant replays. Kennedy's funeral dirge played on as a flag-draped coffin lingered on the black and white screen for days as people slowly filed past to say goodbye. Even I sensed this was a sad, heavy moment. And I was upset too. I wondered if cartoons would ever come back. I liked cartoons, followed at 6 by the evening news. I watched both with equal fascination. I'm told my favorite cartoon characters at the time were Bullwinkle and Senator Everett Dirksen. Even then, I was a news hound, alive at a crucial time and alert to what I saw and what, unlike a lot of other parents, my family chose not to hide. If I asked them what a race riot was, they'd tell me. If I asked them, Daddy, what's Vietnam? They'd tell me. Yet, I was terrified of going to Taos, New Mexico over spring vacation because I was afraid I might run into some greasy Mexican Frito banditos there with bullet bells, big hats, and mustaches, and sneer at me as they leaned against the dirty buildings, might grab me, run off with me like I'd seen them do in so many cowboy and cartoon shows. I was all for Negro civil rights. But when I saw in My Weekly Reader, remember that little school paper and stuff, that American Indians wanted rights too, couldn't believe their nerve. How dare they ask for rights after all the trouble they caused on Daniel Boone? I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, which some people, I tell them that, they say, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were from New York. I grew up in Boulder, about 4 miles from the Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant. Only time will tell what that did to my brain. At least I wasn't drinking the tritium water in Broomfield. In first grade, on the playground, we'd play war. Sometimes even I'd find myself joining the big pack of boys, all chasing one other kid dubbed the Jap, all over the playground, yelling, Didn't occur to me till years later as an adult that a lot of times the designated Jap was the only Vietnamese kid in our grade. I never heard of God till about the 3rd grade. The same year I had to stay after school one fine day and write over and over again, I will not laugh during flag pledge. I will not laugh during flag pledge. Even my mom still laughs over that one. At home, my dad would read us Greek, Roman, and Egyptian mythology as bedtime stories, and I had the choice to discover and decide on my own whether or not to believe in gods. And we were starting to get asked to write a little thing in school. What do you want to be when you grow up? A lot of the boys wrote that they wanted to be a policeman, a fireman, or a baseball player. And a lot of the girls said they wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a Batman villain. I wanted to be the Penguin or the Riddler when I grew up. Now there was some role models I could believe in. That summer, the family vacation, my dad drove me through the ghetto of Detroit to show me up close why people get mad and start riots. I was excited. We went to a real big city, not like Denver, and saw the Henry Ford Car Museum, and I finally got to see some real slums. By the time we got back to my grandparents' place on the other side of Lake Michigan in South Haven, Detroit was on fire, and my grandparents had a color TV. Vietnam blew up in everyone's face. By 5th or 6th grade, everyone at my school knew who was for and who was against the war. The smiling storybook policeman was now a symbol of violent brutality and hate, especially after my dad came home from a trip to California saying an LAPD cop had stuck a shotgun in his belly when he came out to ask why they blocked off the entrance and strewn concertina wire down the middle of this horseshoe-shaped motel where he was trying to run a social work conference, not in LA, but in Santa Barbara, California. He said the cop was shaking as much as he was. Anti-war protests were a regular event across the street from my elementary school at the University of Colorado. Somewhere I still have my souvenir student strike band. I was one of the first kids in school to have long hair, paid for it too. And somewhere around then was when my parents quit buying Coors beer forever. One night, one of my mother's student employees at Interlibrary Loan and Universal Library, Norland Library, showed up at our front door of our house out of breath from running, frightened out of his wits that he was about to get picked up and dragged away by the cops as a draft dodger. I was the only one home. Then one spring morning, my 6th grade teacher had the gall to start off the class by praising the National Guard for shooting 4 anti-war protesters to death at Kent State. Something inside me snapped. Something inside me said, "This will not stand. This will not stand. Not for me anyway. Not now. Not ever." To rub it in, they forced us to sing almost all patriotic songs in the spring music program. But I had a way of getting back at them. I was the worst singer in the class. In 7th grade geography class, there was a long detailed unit. Shut up over there, please. In 7th grade geography class, there was a long detailed unit on Soviet communist propaganda techniques, how their government decided people's careers for them, how they manipulated the masses through billboard slogans and slanted news reporting that didn't even bother to tell people what the government didn't want people to know. How their school books rewrote history, said a Russian invented the light bulb. So in 8th grade I thought, I wonder if some of these same Soviet propaganda techniques are in the American history books too. What do you know? They were. Columbus discovered America. Eurocentric lab-grab speculators and religious fanatics came to visit and decided to stay and make the so-called New World civilized. It was bad enough finding out there wasn't a Santa Claus. Then I found out that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and even Gimme Liberty and Gimme Death Patrick Henry owned slaves. That patriotic heroes of the American Revolution like Paul Revere, John Hancock, Samuel Adams were, by modern definition, terrorists. That our country was founded by agribusiness plantation pot growers who didn't feel like paying taxes, if that sounds familiar. That those pilgrims with the Guns N' Roses hats we had to draw pictures of in elementary school before every Thanksgiving were as out of their fucking mind as Pat Robertson, and later gave us the Salem witch trials. That Father Sarah and the Conquistadores and the Yankee cavalry weren't so civilized towards the natives after all. Did a Russian really invent the light bulb? How will we ever know? Later, I found some old issues of Fortune magazine from early 1941, several months before Pearl Harbor was thick, it was big, and chock full of state-of-the-art full-page ads from those same global corporations we know and love today, bragging about all the money they were going to make once America entered World War II. Then I found out Ford and General Motors helped supply both the Allies and the Nazis, and that General Motors sued the American government after the war for bombing their munitions factory in Dresden and won. When I was 15, starting high school, I got called into the counselor's office. "Eric, it's time for us to sit down and plan your career." What? I'm only 15. What about exploring? What about adventure? What about life? I don't want a career. I hate work. But Eric, look,
We have a special hookup to the big computer out of the IBM factory in scenic Niwot, Colorado. You would just tell the computer your skills, and do you have any hobbies, Eric? Tell it what you think you might actually be able to stomach doing the rest of your life in an age when meaningful work is a luxury, and the computer will choose your career for you. Cool. So I tried my sincere best on these multiple choice questions and entered in my life story, my interests. I said like theater, broadcasting, music, forensics, all the cool classes cut out of the schools because people are too greedy and taborized to pay taxes to keep up the schools that are the first to complain when their kids turn out so stupid and violent when they come out the other end. I told the computer I was good at English, social studies, maybe math, and the computer clinkety-clunked for a while as he used to do back then and spat back on one of them little punch cards that I should spend my high school years studying to become a dental hygiene assistant. With a life like that to look forward to, I guess I should stick to daydreaming. That great sin of the American education system I first got yelled at for and dragged around the room by the hair in second grade. Daydreaming of a far-off Walter Mitty Cinderella ambition like starting a band. But that's just a dream, because this is the 1970s. The sober, stupid, boring 70s that only a bonehead would want to bring back any part of in any form. When we were coming of age, we were dazed and confused. We were disgusted. We missed the 60s. All that fire, all that promise, all that fun. Mellowed out, left unfinished, paved over and dumbed down and sold back to us as new age and what we now call yuppies. And rock and roll had been reduced to a spectator sport, where the so-called alternative scene that so many take for granted today didn't exist. There was no punk, there was no hip-hop, indie underground garage bands, independent discs, zines, let alone the net and social media, were unheard of. In Colorado, you either sounded as horrible as the Eagles or you didn't play. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Music was for mature adults, special people with connections who'd paid their dues, who could all play as good as Jimmy Buffett. The few friends I knew who played instruments at least talked about trying to start a band, but where would we play? What would we play? Maybe cover some songs by Deep Purple? I'd practice singing on the way to school till I could even hit the high notes in Child in Time. Then, how do you think it felt that right when I was getting into Iggy and the MC5, my friends were chucking Black Sabbath for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Scientology jazz fusion, and yes! I was a virgin till I was 19, in part because the intelligent hippie chicks I'd get crushes on were mostly into stuff like James Taylor and Cat Stevens. Being a shy, self-conscious dork with no social skills probably didn't help either. But James Taylor and Cat Stevens, bleh! Give me loneliness and a vivid imagination any day. Now at least I'm a shy, self-conscious dork with no social skills except on stage. And I got a hell of a calling card to hide behind now too. The name Jello Biafra was picked almost at random out of a notebook I brought out to San Francisco from Boulder. Me and my friend John Greenway had sat around one night making up names for bands, names for people in bands, names for songs, and I just like the way the images collide in the mind. And Jello Biafra did seem to have more staying power than smegma pig vomit or mucus melanoma or some of the other ones on there. Although maybe I blew it. Can you imagine when I was on Oprah Winfrey with Tipper Gore and Ice-T, and there she is trying to be all Oprah. And in this chair we have smegma pig vomit. Oh well. But none of what's gone down from that little notebook till now would have been possible if I had clung to my original vow to always rebel by never changing. I was going to be the last die-hard hippie on earth. Other people were selling out and cutting and styling their hair because I would never change, because this was the only true way to rebel, and this is what I would be forever and ever and ever. Well, I'm glad I didn't lock myself into being one thing in one uniform forever and ever and ever. I certainly wouldn't be here if I did that. You know, like so many older punks who should know better are doing now. Sometimes people ask me, how can you remember all this stuff? How could I forget? How could anyone forget? It makes me really sad and a little alarmed when someone my age I haven't seen in years tells me I remember more of their own childhood than they do. That they have no tangible personal memories of Vietnam or even Watergate. We were 16 when Watergate went down. It was on everyone's lips. Senator Sam and those hearings were the best reality show in the history of television, and Nixon was going down. But no, some tell me, well, I don't remember much anything that far back. I guess I had a bad childhood. But if I start humming a TV commercial no one's heard in decades, bing, they recognize it. That's scary. Why? On my 14th birthday, future sham cult figure G. Gordon Liddy and his CIA renegade friends were caught red-handed in the Watergate apartments, breaking into Democratic Party's national headquarters in what supposedly was a clean election and what supposedly was a free country. Burned out from stopping Vietnam or not, people fought back. We were pissed. But did we learn? Did we remember? Contragate is still with us. And Iraq is even worse. Guantanamo Bay torture prison is still open, and they're not going to try a lot of those people because they've driven them too insane to exhibit them in public. Now it's not just government dope dealing like Contragate. We're killing hundreds of thousands of people for oil, throwing little kids in concentration camps while the world burns from climate collapse. Now, everywhere you look, every level of government, it's not just one Nixon, but a whole army of Nixons. The mask is off again, and now we just embrace the face. I wonder why these things just don't register anymore. A few years ago, I couldn't even get myself kicked out of jury duty when I showed up to court wearing my Millions of Dead Cops t-shirt every single day. Nowadays, people are asleep. Nowadays, we've let ourselves be programmed to believe that the Don Psycho tweets or who might run in 2020 or keeping up with the Kardashians are bigger, more important things to worry about than the ongoing slow but sure corporate coup and the organized gangs of banksters stealing billions and billions and billions of dollars, bringing us back not to some other form of capitalism, but to feudalism, not to the 1950s, but the 1850s, and the great Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump-a-muck swindle still going on. Money we could be used for solve real problems right now. Nowadays, we've been programmed to believe that everything from immigrants of a different skin color to gay people getting married to people of color daring to try to vote or NFL players kneeling on a field are more responsible for tearing apart our social fabric than conniving, greedy corporate republicrats. It ain't the fault of the Hillary monster, the Tea Party, or even Colin Kaepernick that our hijacked, unconstitutional government of the people, by corporations, for corporations, must be overthrown. Somewhere out there is what the late folk singer Phil Oakes once called the real America. And I agree that there is something in this land, in us, that's worth trying to hang on to. It ain't all gone with the past. In the past with the old school, the summer of love. Go out and find it. Feel it. Touch it. Create it. Can't deny it is getting scarier all the time. And what's ahead may not be pleasant, but it sure as hell won't be boring. Buy my soda, said the Moose Diarrhea salesman.